You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You're welcome to another conversation. You're welcome to the debate. It is another edition of the debate on the agenda 2063, the African we want. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to share the link with your friends and invite your friends to be part of this conversation. We have young people from the different parts of the African continent who are going to be debating today on the topic the African we want depends on good governance. Are African politicians an impediment to Africa's development? So, today, ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome, and I want you to get your seat, get your water, get your tea, get your whatever your drink, so that we can hear young people debate on the agenda of the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. Who else should build the Africa we want if not us, the young Africans, be it in the diaspora or again in the continent? Who else should be responsible for this agenda if not you and me? So gone are the days that we're waiting for white human or white God somewhere to come to deliver us. Gone are the days that we are waiting for other people to come take the responsibilities. So today it is our time, it is our responsibility to take up this again agenda and of course to work on this agenda, and we're not working alone. That's why we are having the debate, and the debate takes place every Monday from 7 p.m. German time, GMT +2. And the purpose of the debate is to interact, is to network with different young people from the different parts of the African continent, because we know that only together we can go further. And of course, do not forget the agenda is an agenda that is for us all. So today, welcome with us, ladies and gentlemen, our panelists from the different parts of the African continent. We are welcoming Paulina Haikola, and she is from Namibia. Paulina, you're welcome. And of course, we are also welcoming Philip Miyoge. Philip is from Kenya, and Philip is having some difficulties with his light, but he is live audio. Philip, you're welcome. And we are having Mr. Fomban Emmanuel from Cameroon. Mr. Fomban Emmanuel, you're welcome.
Yeah,
And
it's
of
a
course,
privilege, Vera. Thank you for inviting me.
thank you for being my guest today. And of course, we can't proceed without informing our guest that the host himself, Mr. Bolifor Elvis, has been is not feeling too well. That's why he cannot be online with you, ladies and gentlemen. This is his program, and he has been the host. And today I am going to be representing Mr. Bolifor Elvis. And I hope that today we have an interactive conversation and bring, of course, come up with something new, beautiful, or again, interesting for our continent. Remember, today we are talking on the topic the African we want depends on good governance. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome. I want to welcome all of you watching from YouTube. I thank you for being part of the family. And I'm thanking you who is watching also from the Facebook. Thank you for taking your special time and your precious time to be with us. And of course, like I said before, who else should do this work if not you and me? Share the link with friends. Invite your friends to be part of our conversation today. The conversation is an amazing conversation. I take you back again to the topic of today. The African we want depends on good governance. Paulino, you're welcome.
Thank
Former
you.
Emmanuel, you're welcome. And Philip,
Thank
you're
you so much,
welcome.
Vera.
We are hoping to have Mr. Aziz Joseph from Cameroon, that he will be with us shortly, but we can already take up the conversation. Paulino, tell me a little about yourself. How was your day today?
My day was very good. Thank you very much for having me. I've been looking forward to this discussion to hear what the rest of my fellow panelists say. So I'm excited.
I'm very excited. So let's hear, Paulina, what do you think? Um, the first question will be today we are talking about the African politician. What do you think? Are the African politicians an impediment to Africa's development?
I think they are not. In fact, I think African politicians have played an enabling role in Africa's development in the past 60 or 70 years. They've had to lead in the construction of the majority of the social, political, economic, and financial systems and infrastructures that are driving the continent right now. When you put into perspective that it hasn't even been a century since Africans have been at the helm of their own governments, much has been achieved in terms of development indicators such as health outcomes, increased lifespan, access to education, improved quality of life in economic terms, and as well as development in terms of infrastructures of cities and towns alone. So I think African politicians had a lot and a major role to play in building the Africa that we have right now.
Thank you so very much, Pauline. A very interesting point of view, and I like that. I am a moderator today, so I don't have a point of view. Mr. Fomban Emmanuel, you're welcome to have a conversation today. How are you, sir?
Oh, thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here once again. I'm happy to meet Paulina and perhaps Philip, who are my fellow comrades from other African countries. It's a privilege to join them on this panel.
Today we are talking about the African politicians. What do you think? Are the African politicians an impediment to Africa's development?
Yes, actually, I think that the African politicians they are the great impediment to African development because when you actually roll back time, you discover that a good number of things that have been wrong that we can actually highlight as reason why we are still behind as a continent. You want to point accusing fingers to the African politician because the African politician, when it is at the center of abusing power. The African politician is at the center of everything abuse of human rights, and at the end of the day, we get that an Africa where the young people are not actually as performant as they should be, and the reason is because they have the African politicians who have decided to be playing politics on everything that should not even be political. So I very much and strongly believe that the African politician is a great impediment to the Africa's development or anything we want good for the continent.
Thank you, sir. I welcome Philip. Philip, how are you today?
I am doing well, thank you.
And so, what do you think, Philip? Today we are talking about the African politicians, and what do you think are the African politicians an impediment to Africa's development?
I want to say no, and I'm alive to the fact that what Emmanuel has talked about bringing in justice and all that. But even us as citizens of Africa, even us as people who elect these leaders do not exist in space. Okay, they have done what they can do, and I know we started behind others, behind the other continents that we compare with, and we should give our leaders credit, as my colleague Paulina has said. And today I want to support and go support the motion that African leaders are not an impediment to we should play our role.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Those are our panelists for today, and we are missing on board Mr. Aziz Joseph, who will be coming up, and he's saying that yes, the African politicians are an impediment to the African development. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you again. Today we are talking on the subject The African we want depends on good governance. Please, if you're here, share the links with your friends, invite your friends, be a part of this conversation, and let us know what you think. What do you think? Are the African politicians really an impediment to the African continent? What is your take on good governance? Let us hear your point of view, ladies and gentlemen. We are having just a few minutes ahead of us, and I'm very convinced that we're going to have a very special time today, and we're going to be learning from one another. Miss Paulina, I have a question for you, ma'am. When we talk about good governance, is Africa lacking? And what does this really mean, good governance, and what are indicators of good governance? And this question is for all my panelists, please. So you can, and I'm starting with Paulina because you're a woman.
Okay, thank you. Let's start by defining the terms, because especially the term good governance is a very industry-specific term in terms of international development. So when we talk about governance in general, it's defined as the process of decision-making and the process by which decisions are implemented or not implemented. And these processes involve a multitude of actors. So when we talk about good governance in the context of development, specifically international development, we are again talking about a decision-making process that is said to have characteristics of being participatory, consensus-oriented, accountable, that is transparent, that is responsive, that is effective and efficient, equitable and inclusive, and it follows the rule of law, all in an effort to minimize corruption. This is a definition from the United Nations Economic and Social Commission. So it's a very specific definition that the international development community uses. So for me, good governance in this context is a political term, and it is an ideal dreamed up by the international development community, in the same way that other terms over the years have been dreamed up by the same community. And I say it's a political term because we use certain words and terms to get what we want. We have certain agendas. So when we are talking about Africa and good governance, there's an agenda behind that. And for me, I say it's an ideal because a majority of the world nations haven't achieved good governance as defined by the United Nations. This includes many Western nations, even the United Kingdom, which is the biggest proponent of good governance. And so with that in mind, then we can say, yes, Africa is lacking, but only in the context that everyone is also lacking, because this is an ideal that I can't say any society has really attained yet.
An amazing point of view. What do you think, Mr. Forman Emmanuel?
Yes,
Are we lacking?
Yes, I'm actually amazed by what Paulina said. She mentioned some very pertinent issues there. And for me, when we talk of good governance, I actually read from different perspectives. I want to measure freedom of expression, accountability, transparency, efficiency, policy making, and perhaps the inclusiveness that Paulina has mentioned. So definitely, if you have to go by this, you discover that a good percentage of the Africa is still lacking in this. So, as far as good governance is concerned, we are still behind, because if you have to measure these elements, you will discover that in so many countries, definitely you cannot even score a 50% in these elements.
Philip, Mr. Foreman Emmanuel says in certain countries we can't even score 50% of some of the element. What do you think? Are we lacking behind as a continent?
Yes, I believe we are. Just my colleague to join my colleagues to say that we are lagging behind in terms of development. But just as Paulina has said, even in those other countries, there are things they still have their own challenges. So even for us, we can't say that we are lagging behind because of our leaders. All right, and I can say that nobody is perfect, and the leaders we have, they are trying in their own capacities. But I think when we join together, citizens, the leaders, will come together, hold hands, and pursue this direction, I believe we can do something better and we can become a greater continent.
Mhm. Thank you so much, my panelists. I welcome Mr. Christopher. He's watching from Germany and he's saying good evening. He's extending his greetings to you and he says sometimes they are an impediment. So, confirming, of course, our panelists. And my next question is: does the development of a continent solely depend on politicians?
Yes, I don't know if this question is going first to Paulina
It's
or
for
it's
you
a
all.
random
It's for
question.
you all.
Okay,
It's you
okay.
for you all. So you can answer, sir.
Okay, absolutely. I think that the development of any country, it depends so much on the politician, because actually we won't want to have a scenario where we have a jungle republic where anybody is just doing anything. So it is always very important. Even in every household, there are people that are selected, like to champion certain things in every household. So it so happens, at least also in every country, it is very important to elect leadership. And this is where politicians come. When you elect people to represent you as leaders, these people are politicians, and everything good that you want in terms of management of resources, development, you want these people to spearhead. So when they fail, you get the kind of societies that we have actually in Africa today. So I wholly submit that the development of any country or of the continent depends so much on politicians, because there is definitely nothing that the ordinary person can do that can impact the country without the hand of the politician. I take, for instance, when you get a country where politicians decide to be doing their thing without really considering the welfare of the citizen, without really considering that they should be there to power the citizens to work. And you get entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs growing up and suffering the issues of taxes, sometimes poor internet like we are doing now and all of that. You get many of these things become suppressing factors that cannot actually permit young people to go this way, or the ordinary man in the society to go this way. So I actually submit that anything for the country to for the continent to be able to emerge, the politicians have a very great role to play.
Okay, thank you, sir. The politicians have a very great role to play. Paulina?
Yes, I do agree that politicians have a role to play, but I certainly don't think that the development of a continent, or let alone any country, is dependent on one set of actors, especially considering the globalized world we live in. And obviously for Africa, it's even more crucial to note that our politicians are not as independent as we make them out to be. For as long as Africa is economically and politically bound to current international and financial and political systems and structures that sometimes force them to adopt certain policies and views, then the development of the continent will be affected by a much broader range of actors. So this, in the terms of development, includes the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations organizations, multinational corporations, especially in sectors like oil, mining, pharmaceuticals, and food industries. Foreign governments who are large donors to specific countries have a lot of say in the policies that are adopted by governments. And then, of course, also locally, the local businesses, religious leaders, citizens, political parties, whether they be the ruling party or the opposition parties, also impact a lot. The media also has a huge role to play. So I think the development of a continent or even a nation will have a lot of the a lot of actors involved in it. And for Africa, what I think we should consider doing more in the future is being more independent of the international forces that hover over our leadership.
Thank you so very much, Paulino. And Mr. Philip, I have another question for you because Paulina and Fomban, they have really discussed on that, except you have another opinion.
Yes, I needed to add something, and I want to
Yes.
agree with all my colleagues that as much as our leaders are part to play in developing Africa and the countries of Africa, I think we, the majority, the citizens, the common man, the common person, are those who are many. If you look at any country, I think those we call leaders or politicians are about maybe less than 2% or something. And if you look at a country like Singapore, when you read history, that country was developed by people. Those people supported the people, those who are in authority. You know, they were told we have to like pay 50% for this particular time, and they obeyed. You know, if you look at economic data in any country in Africa, you will realize that there are very many businesses that people are doing, and most of them are not even registered. So, which means most of them are not even paying taxes. For example, here in Kenya, in my country, Kenya, we have very many businesses that are operating. The common person is operating, yet they do not pay tax. They do not want to support the government because they think I didn't support this government, so why would I want to pay tax? And I think this is some of the ways we can use to support the government or the authority or leaders so that we can have that development that we want as Africans. We can't just sit there and wait for leaders to bring that development for us. We have a huge role as a people to play in developing Africa. And one of them is paying our taxes, obeying the authority, and supporting and working with them. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you so much, Philip. That takes me even to the next question. What is the
Please,
role?
I
Yes,
think
sir.
yes, if you would permit, I
Yes,
think I
Mr.
still have a
Fomban.
submission to. Yes, I think I still want to react to some input made by the Philip. Yeah, I heard Philip talking of maybe some businessmen in Kenya who refuse to pay taxes and all of that. But I want to remind Philip that a sign that shows that we cannot use the refusal of some people to pay taxes in Kenya as a reason maybe to relieve politicians from the reasons why certainly development has been pulling back in the country. You discover that in the country. I think that in Kenya, I know President Uhuru Kenyatta has been doing a lot when it comes to fighting corruption, but we still get reports of government personalities embezzling some huge sums of money that would have been used certainly for development and other projects. So this money is a sacrifice of a huge number. I think that this number of the people, the percentage of the population that are doing businesses in Kenya that are not paying taxes, they should be very minimal, because I know that a good number of them, of people doing business in Kenya, have been pay their taxes. And there are also reports, like I'm saying, of government personalities embezzling huge sums of money, which are unfortunately taxpayers' money. So I think that we cannot hold on this base, because in as much as there's a huge population making the sacrifices, we should learn to work on this base, because in every other situation we should always have people, the different cases. It's not, I think it's not only in Kenya. There are people who operate black businesses everywhere, where they don't actually pay taxes, where they escape from taxes. But we shouldn't use this to actually explain the reason why the political systems or political figures, they are not very performant, because for a good number of them who pay, for a good number of many of us who pay taxes, who decide to be patriotic, we are only paid back with things like embezzlement.
Thank you, Mr. Fomban. I see Paulina is nodding her head. Do you want to say something, Paulina?
Not exactly, but I do see the point that Fonban is making.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Philip. Do you want to say something on that?
Yes, I want to add something. I want to respond to Manuel by saying that corruption is very rampant in Africa, and even in other countries, like even UK or China. But I think also what I want to say is that I don't want to support corruption, but what I want to say is that these leaders are a representation of the community, because we are the people who elect them to these positions. So we cannot say that they exist in space. I think we have policies, we have rules, and we have constitutions. When somebody is corrupt, okay, in my country, Kenya, I know they are very corrupt, and I'm saying that without fear of ever. But I think it is us citizens not doing our role, because in like our constitution, there's a section where we can recall our leaders. So why can't us, the citizen, use those powers that we've been given by the constitution, recall our leaders? And the fact is, and as we were discussing with the Vera before, is divide and rule.
Mm-hmm.
When some people want to recall these leaders, or when we mention that this leader is corrupt, we are afraid. Some people go to the other side and say, this is my a member of the community, and the other people go to the other side and say, this is they are eating. We are supposed to remove him, and it is us who are still failing at the end of the day because we don't want to unite. Okay, we don't want to put our leaders to be accountable. So at the end of the day, as much as we have corruption, and I agree, everybody will agree. At the end of the day, the buck lies with the citizens, because we are the people who have elected these people. We are the people who have put them in these positions. At the end of the day, we fail because we don't put them to be accountable. Yes, I felt I
Wow.
needed to respond. Thank you.
Wow.
Unfortunately, Philip, the legal instruments only empowers a politician to hold another politician accountable. It does not empower civilians to hold politicians accountable. I think that this is the unfortunate case that we have, because if you discover that a government personality has embezzled taxpayers' money, the constitution does not empower you to go and hold him responsible. The constitution can only empower people, like certainly court people, the judges in courts, maybe through the anti-corruption organizations of the country that are headed still by politicians. So this is the unfortunate thing that we have, that our constitutions only empower politicians to hold other politicians accountable. And unfortunately, we have ourselves in many countries in Africa where these politicians, they actually form some gangs wherein if you are doing this and your colleague is committing a crime, you don't hold him responsible for a crime he's committing, because you know that tomorrow when you are committing your own crime, he's not going to hold you accountable too. So this is the unfortunate thing that we have.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. Paulina, thank you. Fomban
Okay,
Emmanuel, thank you, Philip. We are having the conversation today, or again, the debate today is on the African we want depends on good governance. And we are having our panelist, Paulina Haikola, who is saying that yes, she thinks, no, she thinks that the politicians are not an impediment to the development of Africa. And as well as Mr. Philip and Mr. Fomban Emmanuel is saying yes, and he is really defending his case. Now we take the next conversation with the next question. We have people watching, and some of them are commenting. We have Peace of Best, who is watching from Benin, and she said yes, they are an impediment. And of course, you're welcome. Peace, keep sending your messages, your own informations, and your own point of views. Share the link with your friends so that we have more of us coming to have this conversation. And we are having Linda Yemle, who is saying hello to all you all. And we have also Mr. For Brandon, who is saying, good evening. I think the development of a country does not depend fully on the politicians. We citizens, we have a big role to play. And that takes me to my next question. What possible suggestions can you bring out to solve the problems of accountability? In your conversation, already in your discussion, I already noticed the word accountability coming up and coming up. And I see that, yes, at the moment we really don't have this kind of systems to hold the people accountable. So what would you suggest, Paulina, or again, Mr. Fomban, any of you can take that question? What possible suggestions can you bring out to solve the problem of accountability of our politicians and also those people who are involved in management of resources?
Yes, I think that if I were to go on this question, I think that one of the first things that I would recommend is actually for civil society organizations in every country to be empowered Because if we have civil society organizations empowered to actually make sure that they fight corruption, that they fight embezzlement, there is going to be some level of transparency. Because if a minister sits in his office and he knows that there is a civil society organization that can actually come and check maybe the resources that have been that he has been given, certainly to realize some projects, that civil society organizations can come check this. I think that there will be more there will be more serious than they are now. And then another thing is that in many countries, we see many countries deciding to form organizations to fight corruption. Like in Cameroon, we have an anti-corruption commission that is called CONAC. I think there is also a structure like this in Kenya. I don't know about Namibia, Paulina, if you people do have. And most of the times that when countries think of creating these kind of organizations, they are good structures that governments in many countries consider to create. But unfortunately, they create these organizations or these structures and they don't give them powers. Yes, it means we have such organizations, but they don't actually have powers by which they could actually hold perpetrators or embezzlers or corrupt people accountable. We only have the countries most of the times only give them powers to occasionally publish reports of maybe of the level of corruption in some in government institutions, and it ends at that. Because I think that if some of these structures actually have the powers to actually publish these reports, hold people who have been corrupt or people who have been maybe guilty of corruption practices and the rest, if they have these powers, I think that it's going to go a long way to reduce. And then another thing is that we need to develop mechanisms by which we can actually start shaming those who are found guilty of corruption. Because I bet you a minister or any public official in any country, if they know very well that if the budget of your structure of your establishment is about 5 billion, and at the end of the day there are checks in it and it's discovered that you have not been able to make use of it properly and you cannot account for it, and you know very well that maybe there are consequences that can give you a public shame. That I think that people will refrain from this. If people know that no matter who they are, whether it's a minister or what, if you are found guilty of corruption, they will put you in front of cameras and shame you and officially declare you as a corrupt person and take you to jail. And certainly, I think that people will think twice when they are doing some of these things. So, my first recommendation: civil society organizations should be empowered. The second recommendation is that government structures that are aimed at fighting corruption should be empowered and given the right to actually go beyond publishing of reports. I think that with these two, they can be able to. In fact, we can go a very long way of boosting our transparency, the level of transparency we have in every country.
Thank you, sir. Paulina?
Yes, I agree with Emmanuel, and I just want to add that when we're talking about corruption and accountability of corrupt officials, it's not just at the senior or high level political figures that we should concentrate on, but also at the public institution. So even if it's a public university, so if someone is running a public university and they mismanaged or embezzled funds or they behaved in some other corrupt way, it is important to hold every public servant accountable for whatever corruption they engage in. And this means more than just dismissing them. This habit of dismissing somebody from one ministry to transfer them to another has to come to an end. I agree with his suggestion that someone should be brought before the public and put in jail to show that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated. In Namibia, we have a problem where no one seems to go to jail for corruption. You just sort of just get recycled from one entity to another to steal another day.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Mr. Philip, do you also want to say something? And we
Yes,
have
sorry, Yes, I'm here. I want to say something. I think it's a very good, nice topic that even Emmanuel raised before we reach there. I think corruption starts with an individual. Corruption starts at the household level. Corruption goes from there up to the top level, which is the president or the prime minister or whichever highest level of leadership is in that country. And at the end of the day, we Africans and our African legislatures are very good at making laws. They are very good at putting things on paper. But at the end of the day, none of them is being implemented. And I think I will go back to my stand when I say that us citizens have a very big role to play in terms of good leadership, in terms of development, in terms of combating corruption, and ensuring that we have accountability. Just the other day, I'll give you a typical example that we had in Kenya. One of our MPs was taken to court. It has been a case that's been in the court for a very long time. I think 10 years now, and less than a month ago, this MP was sentenced, with former minister was sentenced to imprisonment, I think about 7 years, or fine almost shillings. I don't know how to convert that, almost about a billion Kenya shillings. And now the next day, I was surprised to watch on TV the next day the consequence of this member of parliament. People who support him on street. And yet we know well this person stole money, public money that was supposed to buy maize, and that is a staple food in Kenya, maize for citizens. And people went on street defending this MP. That this person is old, he's an MP, we know we have him, and those are some of the impediments or some of the challenges we face to fight corruption. I think sometimes we can blame our leaders, but at the end of the day, as citizens, we have a very big role to play in ensuring that we have accountability at whatever level. And it starts from the house. It starts from the individuals. I want to give another example. When we in Kenya, when we select people to go to primary, when they are going to the secondary schools, and then you find that a mother or a father, a parent goes and then bribe their way into another institution, because they don't like where their children were called. But you see, this thing, we trust that the system is transparent, the system is fair. But you see, that's how you teach your child corruption. When you start bribing their way into better institutions than where they're placed, because you think they're not better. When we are going to the university and then you try to bribe a way to get a good position in that place, and that is how corruption starts. So I think it is us as an individual. As much as we want to also say our leaders should also play their part, and then I also agree, but it starts with the individual in whatever capacity that you hold. Whether you are a father, whether you are a mother, whether you are heading an institution, I think start with the individual. And I think when we move together and forge ahead with one voice, holding our hands together and say together can, I think we can fight corruption and we can have the development that we want in Africa.
Well, thank you so very much to all my panelists. We are having some very great conversation, and also our listeners and viewers. Mr. Emma Lambert says, for the case of transparency, I think African society should adopt the system of declaring assets before any of those politicians take a political office. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Vera, before I go on to this, maybe before it escaped memory, last week I saw actually a video footage of something which made me so impressed. I in my mind it was like, if it has been like this in every country, then definitely would have gone far as corruption, fighting corruption is concerned. It was actually a situation in Nigeria where a government personality, I don't know if it was a minister or a director was actually brought in front of the parliament, and the parliament had to question him on the budget, on the budget of the previous year, on the report of the budget of the previous year that he actually brought. They continuously questioned him and embarrassed him with questions there until he fainted in the National Assembly. I don't know if it was the Senate or the National Assembly. And these type of things, when they happen on camera, there's nobody who want to go through this experience. And if we continuously put many of these things on camera, then definitely we are going to go a long way. And then to react to what definitely our commentator is saying, I think Emma Lambert, I think that as far as this is concerned, the politicians have been playing a fast one on us, a very, very fast one on us. There are a good number of them who are registering some of their assets in their relatives' names. Like you see a politician who actually owns a structure or a company, but will decide to take a relative from somewhere and register the structure in their name. But they know very well that that relative cannot do more than just representing that structure on paper as the owner. So I think that this is where they have been playing a fast one on us. But like I said, if we empower civil society organizations and they know that they have to be putting their tentacles everywhere, then there are many of these things that we are going to be fishing out. And definitely it will be very difficult for them to do this. If it's only concerning the issue of declaring of assets, I think that for that one that has outsmarted us, and they had seen maybe a fast way they could run away from this. Yeah. Because a good
Yes.
number of them, there's a good number of government officials who have actually registered so many of their businesses in the names of their relatives. And then to just conclude with this one now, like I said, I always believe that if we have a mechanism that can hold those at the top uh, accountable and make sure that they cannot do nonsense when it comes to corruption or when it comes to embezzlement, I think that those ones up, they can be able to be very hard at the ones that are below them. It's just like you are a general manager of an institution, and then you know that every time you have to spend on something, or there are 100 cameras looking at you, and you cannot steal anything. You will make sure that your sub director or your assistant will never escape from that place with even a franc, just because you know that this is what is done on you. So you want to reciprocate it to those below you. Yeah.
Thank you so very much. And do we have any
Allow me
person
to.
again to? Yes, go on.
Yes. Allow me here, Philip. I want to add something. I think I agree with our good audience. That's Emma Lamb, and that we should have a system that people declare their assets.
Yes.
However, if we don't have the goodwill with our leaders, I think it cannot go anywhere. We have that in Kenya, and every leader that is coming to leadership, whether you are nominated, whether you are appointed, you are supposed to declare your wealth. It has never worked. As Emmanuel said, very many in Kenya there is that there's this thing which is common where they send some money abroad. Right now we are fighting corona, and it is believed, I read in the papers just a few days ago, that most of the billions that was allocated by the president to fight COVID, most of this is in accounts abroad of people. Some of them put in the name of their relatives, as my brother is saying. Some of them even try to create tenders that are not there and give their relatives. So if you don't have the goodwill, then it cannot work. But if we have the goodwill of the people and the leadership, then I think it's a good system that can really help us out.
Thank you so very much, Paulino. I think we're good to go with that question. And then we have another commentator from Mr. Richard Sompan, and that is my husband, who is saying the competence of leadership play a great role in development. A group of sheep led by a lion can be more efficient than a group of lions led by sheep. What do you think, Paulina?
I like the analogy very well. It's quite powerful. And I think there's definitely truth in that. That sometimes in certain African countries, it feels like you have a group of lions being led by sheep. And then sometimes it's the other way around, where the population is ready, it's eager, but the leadership is simply interested in their own self gains or holding on to what they've been holding on to for decades.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wants to say something on that?
Yeah,
We are
Yes,
getting almost close to our
I
time,
want to say
so be
something.
very brief. Yes, go on, please, Philip, or is that Mr.
Let me say
Emmanuel?
something first before I think I believe with Mr. Richard, and however, we also have very good leaders in Africa. As much as we have bad ones, of course, in Kenya we have bad ones and good ones. There's a leader, one of my governors is called Makueni. I'm another county in my country that is called Makueni County. Professor Kibusa Kibwana. He's a very good leader, and we've seen whatever he has done. And this person wants to be the president, But let me tell you guys, maybe if you follow Kenyan politics, when it reaches that time, that person can even get even 100 votes out of the 47 million Kenyans that we have. So at the end of the day, it is us who choose the leaders. And as I've been saying before, so at the end of the day, we just have to focus and see who is doing the right thing. When we are selecting, what have they done or what are they capable of doing? So that we select people who are leading us in the right direction. Because as I said before, our leaders are a true representation of us. So when we are led by the wolves, and we are also wolves because we put them there. Thank you.
Amazing conversation. It's so challenging when you are a moderator and you don't have to have your own point of view, right? It's so challenging.
Yeah,
So, but I
I
can
know.
keep that to myself.
yeah. But
Ayemla Linda is on here and she's saying our African leaders can be resourceful in making Africa a better place if they keep aside tribalism and the greed to remain in power. What do you think, Paulina? Does it still defend your point of view?
Um, Tribalism can be a problem in many countries. Unfortunately, for us in Namibia, it hasn't been as a major problem as it has in some countries. But I think definitely the issue of greed is one that not just politicians, but societies have to address because as Philip was saying earlier, politicians don't exist in space. They're not living in a vacuum. If their politicians are corrupt, it's because they live and function in a corrupt society. And we as citizens must also check our behaviors of how we behave in terms of greed and corruption. And do we hold ourselves accountable for these actions that we're complaining our leaders misbehaving? We also pay bribes. So if we don't want our leaders to receive bribes, then we should never pay bribes to anyone for any reason.
Mm-hmm. Ouch, amazing. Mr. Fomban Emmanuel, we do not have to
yeah,
pay bribes.
yeah,
So we are
yeah,
our leaders are the representative of the people. What do you say?
yeah,
Linda says the African leaders can be resourceful in making Africa a better place if they keep
yeah.
aside tribalism and the greed of remain in power.
Yeah, please, I want to go by this, even though first starting with the reaction of Mr. Sompon Richard, who, in fact, I was so amazed to see his comments, well articulated in English. Yes, yes, he mentioned the aspect of actually competence. And I want to say that when previously, I don't know if we have been rating our competence only based on academic qualification, because I want to think that if it's only when it comes to political leadership, not only even political leadership, leadership in any structure, you can't define competence based only on or whether on qualification. In my opinion, if we start looking at competence from qualification, the morality of a person, the efficiency of that person, I think that definitely will be able to get the right people who can actually champion most of our structure. Then going then to what Linda just to Linda's input, I think that I remember sometimes when I was attending mass somewhere, and a priest said, there's one priest who was preaching and said that there's one thing which has destroyed us in Africa here, the Zums. He called it the Zums, from the favoritisms, the nepotisms, the egoisms, and all of that. The family of Zums have been tearing us apart more than anything. And just what Linda is saying, if it's not, if in as far as leadership is concerned, in public structures, if it's not tribalism, then it's nepotism. If you are not
Oh,
favoring somebody because they are family member or a relative and all of that, and this continuously play on us, and this is the reason why we continuously have bad people in the right places, bad people championing good structures who that should be serving public structures. So I think that if we have to do away with this family of Zums, we should be able to see ourselves somewhere.
if we have to deal with the families of Zims, we will see ourselves somewhere. Mr. Philip, what do you think about the family of
Yes.
Zims?
the family of, I can't hear that well. I wanted to comment on this issue of Linda Ayeme, our
Go on,
audience,
go on, go
and
on with
uh,
the issue of Linda.
and I think when I see the issue of tribalism, I think I cry for my country because I remember 2007 we almost lost our country to when we really fought after election. And I think our leaders are very resourceful when it comes to putting people in cocoons of tribes. And I think that is what the colonialists shown us. And we've decided not to let this go. I wish every African country can be like Tanzania, where they have settled almost a certain tribe, and you can never hear any of them mentioned. But for us, I think leaders have really used this as a tool to divide us. And each and every election, I think in Kenya, it is always against tribe. We always fight this tribe against that tribe. It's not about which leader we want. It is not about what position you want to hold. It is about which tribe do you come from and whether you have the votes. We are looked at in terms of votes, not in terms of what I'm going for you or in terms of my manifesto or in terms of what I'm capable of. They are being looked at in terms of tribe. Where do you come from? How many people do you have? When they went to want to divide resources, when you go there to talk on the table of politics, on the table of top leadership, you'll be asked how many people do you have in your community. And I think that is one of the things that is really weighing us behind. And I think that is a really something that we really need to talk about. And it's something that we to really find a way of ending it very soon. I think like 5 years ago or 100 years.
Thank you so very much, Philip. And we are having Happy Sue from Kenya. And she said, great discussion here. The panel is on the spot. And that takes me to the next question. We are almost coming to the end of our debate. It has been a very fantastic debate. Hey, friends, you can always forward the link to other friends so that they can come get involved. I am seeing Francisco Mila also watching from Kenya. You're all welcome. I'm seeing Mr. Elvis, the host. Despite the fact that you're in the hospital, you're still tuning in. God bless you and get well soon. And my last question for you will be, if you were a politician and you had all it takes to achieve the agenda and the Africa we want, what will be your first actions and why?
Okay, let me go first.
Yes.
um, the first thing I would do is education. I think maybe it's because I work in the education sector, but for me, a very well-educated population is a powerful population. And so not just basic education, but all the way to university level. And this education would also have a focus on civic education where people are aware of their rights, the laws, so that if you are committing crimes, you can pretend that you didn't know. So an educated population is important, or for me, if I were to be a politician. The second thing I would have to do, it would be economics, redistributive economics. In Southern Africa, we have this problem of land, and it's only a problem because our first generation of leaders who took over decided to leave the land in the hands of the people who stole it. If I were in charge at that point in history, I would have declared all the land of whatever country I was heading to be national land, so that the idea of private property in the hands of people who stole it from generations comes to an end at the beginning, rather than leaving an unresolved issue for 3 decades only to blow up as it has blown up in the case of Zimbabwe. South Africa and Namibia continue to tangle with this issue, and it is an unfortunate issue because now imagine our government has to buy land back from people who got it by ill means. Basically, they stole the land, and now we have to pay to get it back. So the issue of redistributive economics is important for me if we are to build an Africa that truly belongs to us as Africans. And then the last item would be law enforcement. I don't know if it was Philip or Van Ban who had said earlier that we have good laws, but we don't implement them. Namibia suffers from this greatly, where we have amazing laws, amazing policies, but we don't implement. But for me, law enforcement is important to combat things like corruption and then crime that is popping up in the face of poverty and inequalities.
Thank
Those
you
are my
so very much, Paulina. Those were amazing points there. You mentioned education, law enforcement, economic powers. Thank you so very much. Mr. Fomban, what would you do, assuming that you are a politician and you have all that it takes to achieve the agenda? What will be your first actions and why?
Yes, to me, definitely, I'm one of the people who believe, just like you, that there is nobody who can do it all alone. I think that if I actually was in the position to act, if I actually have all it takes, I think the best thing was that I should make sure that I have a manhunt for competent people, people who can be able to set an agenda, people who can be able to work harder to realizing an agenda, so that together when we team up, I'll not need too many of them. I know that if I get a good number for the strategic positions, they can be able to maybe to able to replicate or that character to other structures. So I think that if we are really in the good position for that, I'll make sure first of all that I have an agenda, and then I set out to look for people that can actually work harder to satisfy that agenda. Yes, it could be an agenda of cleaning corruption from the systems. It could be an agenda of maybe bringing development to another level. When you have this agenda, I think that when you set out there, you know the right person to seek, especially when you know that you are selecting people not based on relationships or not based on any favors you want to grant to them as friends or whatsoever. So I think that when you set out for this, you would have those people, and there is nothing that stops, because there's no shortage of those people in every country. We just decide to be too egoistic, to be too to be playing nepotism, to be playing tribalism, and actually leaving out the right people who should actually be giving the right assistance to every country, to, whether to countries, to make them take another level. I think that if I were actually in place, this is what I was going to do.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fumban. And to you, Mr. Philip, what would you do and why would you take the first actions if you were a
I'll,
politician?
I'll, I'll make it brief. I will borrow from Pauline. I don't know whether why today. I don't know why today we are just thinking on the same line. And what I'll say, when I was a leader, I think I'll just do two things. Okay, and on these things is to empower the people. Okay, number one, African leaders have taken advantage of their people because of ignorance, and have always maintained that status quo so that people they are able to wield power as much as they want. One thing I'll do, I will educate the people, because that is why we are lacking behind as Africans. In some parts of the country like Kenya or in other African countries, there are places where you go, somebody cannot even write their name, which means they are not empowered. They don't have information. And that is why when they are given $2, when people are complaining, they will vote that person, not in terms of what they can do or what their capacity is, but because they were given some little coins. Okay. Number two, I will make laws work for people. And thank you, Pauline. I'm the one who said that we have very good laws, but we never implement them. What I'll do, I'll make sure the laws are implemented. And as my president said when he was giving address to talk about the COVID, the laws will apply to all, whether you're an honorable or you're a common person. And I think that is what I can do as an African leader. And thank you for that opportunity to try to imagine I am other in Africa. I hope I will be one.
You will be one for sure. Thank you, Paulina Haikolo, who is from Namibia. I appreciate the fact that you have been here and you have been for the fact that no, the African politicians are not an impediment to the African development. I want to appreciate you also, Mr. Fumban Emmanuel, who has vehemently said, yes, they are for an impediment to the African continent. And thank you, Mr. Philip. You're from Kenya, and you say like Paulino from Namibia. No, they are not. And that the responsibility lies in the hands of the citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching the debate. It is a program, a platform where we come every Mondays to discuss about the issues related to Africa and the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want. And today the topic is the African we want based on good governance. Are African politicians an impediment to Africa's development? And we have had amazing viewers who have given their own different kind contribution. And I can't read all the comments. I appreciate you all for being here. And I thank you because I know that we are working hand in hand to see that the continent develops and that we achieve the Africa that we want before 2063. I appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen, and we've come again to the end of our debates today, and we're hoping to meet you same time next week on Monday with another debate. And so be a part of us and let us build the continent we want. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you to all my panelists. God bless you. Today, my name is Vera Sompod, and I've been your host. Our host has been sick, and I'm wishing him that he gets well very soon. We meet next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.